Poland went through a peaceful evolution, a radical peaceful evolution, a radical transformation, but not a revolution. The first step in that peaceful evolution were the roundtable talks between the communist regime and the leaders of Solidarity. Solidarity was banned during the martial law in 1981, but after a new wave of strikes in 1988, the communist leadership and the leaders of Solidarity agreed to hold roundtable talks to plan the course of action to be undertaken in Poland. The Polish communists, led by the military dictator Wojciech Jaruzelski, hoped to co-opt prominent opposition leaders into the ruling group without making major changes in the political power structure. But during the talks, they agreed to the legalization of Solidarity and to real parliamentary elections, which were carried out on June 4th, 1989. Those elections were the second step in our peaceful transformation. In June 25 years ago, the Polish people were the first in the former Eastern Bloc to vote in real elections for 2 chambers of the Polish parliament. The outcome was a landslide victory to Solidarność. Solidarity candidates won 99% of the seats in the Senate and all of the possible seats in the Sejm, 161 of them. The communists totally lost the election, and not long thereafter, Poland had the first non-communist prime minister, Tadeusz Mazowiecki. The third step in our peaceful evolution was the economic shock therapy. Yes, shock therapy, formerly titled the Balcerowicz Plan after its primary architect, Leszek Balcerowicz, who was finance minister in 1989. This was intended to rapidly reform the Polish economic structure from a centrally planned economy into a privatized, market-based one. 10 acts of law were quickly drafted and hurried through Parliament. They focused on monetary policies, to restrict the supply of money and raising interest rates above the inflation level. The government would no longer be able to finance budget deficits by just printing money. Austerity measures to reduce the Polish government debt, mostly through cutting subsidies and eliminating tax exemptions and tax evasion. Elimination of price controls. Yes, in communism there were price controls. 90% of those price controls were immediately eliminated. Liberalizing foreign trade. This was done by reducing barriers to international trade, encouraging foreign investment, and moving to establish the Polish currency, the zloty, as a convertible currency. And ending state control over income levels and reducing the role of state industries, which allowed the Polish private sector to grow and wages to be determined by market conditions. Thanks to shock therapy, food shortages immediately ended, inflation went down, and internal debt was limited. Although as a result of the Balcerowicz Plan, roughly 1.1 million people at state-owned firms lost their jobs, already by 1992, more than 600,000 private companies had been set up, providing jobs for approximately 1.5 million people. The unemployment rate at the end of 1990 went up from 0.3% to 6.5%, which then seemed to be a lot, but today is even higher. The fourth step in our peaceful evolution was a gentleman's agreement of all major political powers on Poland's modernization and integration with the West. Governments kept changing, but the fundamental interests stayed the same. Poland was supposed to rejoin Western Europe, and we did, 15 years ago by joining NATO and 10 years ago by joining the European Union. Theoretically, when capitalism was introduced, everyone had the same chances of becoming successful. But the practice was different. Those who were privileged under the old system, the old nomenclatura, had a much better starting position in the new reality. They were, if you like, in pole position. They had much easier access to money, and with connections in the judiciary system, with friends who were prosecutors or judges, it was not just easier for them to establish their businesses and to develop them, but it was even possible for them to make lives hard for their competition. In many parts of our society, this led to bitterness. Some people in Poland even started to blame democracy and capitalism for such state of affairs. This, however, meant that for quite some time, at many levels of public administration, there was a continuation of people and, unfortunately, also of their habits. Nonetheless, this peaceful evolution was worth it. Even with all its faults, it was certainly a much better way to transfer from communist to market economy than a revolution which could have cost innocent lives. Peace also allowed us to develop very rapidly. Today, Poland is a successful member of the European Union. All this goes to show that Poles have made good use of the historic opportunity of 1989. So it's hardly surprising now, after 25 years of freedom, that Lech Wałęsa, the hero of solidarity, has declared Poland's systemic transformation from communist to market economy to be finally and successfully over. And I fully agree. Thank you.
Or even in Ukraine, where the rich people, oligarchs, take over, win elections, can finance new parties, and therefore it seems that you don't have that in Poland, or am I wrong?
And what happened in Poland is, since at the beginning of transition, there were these ties between the old nomenklatura and business. We had our politicians went then to the other extreme, and they preferred not to have any ties to business, which makes it very difficult in a modern economy where politicians need to know something about the economy and should have connections to business, because after all, their salaries come from taxes paid also by businesses and by companies. So we're trying now to find the best way of having the political class dealing with businesses, but not just with businesses. It also has to do with scientists, with researchers, because there is this golden triangle: politics, business, and research. And if you get these connections right, I think you have the right formula for success of your country.
I wonder what was the need of Poland to be partners with NATO? Was there a threat from Russia? After all, the revolution was a peaceful, as you said, a peaceful event. So what was the danger that you tried to prevent by joining NATO?
Well, I think if you watch the news today, you have the answer. One of the reasons why no one is helping Ukraine is because Ukraine is not in NATO. And we would not like to be in a situation that Ukraine is today. We have Russian troops right on our border in Kaliningrad, and quite a few of them.
Was Afghanistan your war? If Afghanistan was a Polish war,
it's it's a difficult question, because obviously Poland is interested in Central Europe. It's interested in Europe, but it hardly has interest in national interests or solid interests in Afghanistan. But we are good allies. And I think if for a country other than Poland to have Poland as an ally, it's a very good thing, because you can always count on us. And when the decision was made that there will be an intervention in Afghanistan, we were there.
reconciliation between nations is a topic we try to study as a World Peace Forum, and is always on our agenda and has been for the past years. You yourself have been a great instrument and champion for Polish-German reconciliation. My question goes, like we have been looking further east to that big brother, Russia.
It's not an easy process because whereas we were able to have this process of reconciliation between Germany and Poland, it's because we viewed many of the events of the past in a similar way. The Germans agreed that what they did during World War II was very bad, whereas we're dealing with Russians today, and their leader considers the fall of the Soviet Union to be the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. And we consider this the establishment of the Soviet Union probably as the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. So there's a big difference in how we view the world and how we view recent events in history. And you know, we're hopeful for the future, of course, because we would like to have neighbors who are peaceful and whom we can cooperate with and whom we can do business with from every side of our border. So we hope that this will come someday, although right now it's quite difficult to envision that this will happen within the next 2-3 years.